Well, I feel compelled to make a video today. We've been talking so much Neville stuff. And I always find, I think I always have, honestly, when I start thinking about some of the manifesting instructions that Neville gives and how he often talks very specifically about manifesting something, a specific thing, by going to the wish fulfilled, that specificity, after a while, kind of turns me off. And that's not a knock against Neville. That's more just like my own personal preferences and my approach to, trying to improve things practically in my life. I've always been more of a generalist, someone who likes to go, quote unquote, general when it comes to these manifesting ideas. That's where I've always found the most success in my life, is when I go general. When I think too hard, basically, I don't want to say think too often. I think thinking often is fine, but think too hard about something I want. Instead of that being a productive use of my time, it often is an unproductive use of my time. Because if I desire something, what often happens is, once I've thought about it some, been able to conjure up the idea of having it, the feeling of having it, if I keep on thinking about it, I have a tendency to then think about how I don't currently have it, how I know what it would be like to have it, but right now I don't have it. I tend to focus too much on the negativity of not having it as opposed to the positivity of already having it. Now, this is not the case for other people. People are different. A lot of people have a lot of success getting very specific with their desires and then just holding on to the positive feelings associated with that specific desire. That's never worked well for me. And that's why, I always talk about, I was talking to Cecilia the other day about, the way that Neville's work best for me is the way I've described it in, Relax More, Try Less, which is that you or I relax into that state of fulfillment of everything's okay, it's over, it's done. It's always been done. There's completeness right now. Everything's fine right now, right? And when I do that, when I really get general in that good way, that holistic way of I'm relaxed. It's done. Everything's fine right now. The present moment is good. The present moment is God, right? Which is very much in line with what Neville talks about a lot of the time as well. When I do that, things seem to turn out better in my life. And it would be okay if they didn't, just because I would feel better. But not only do I feel better, other things change in a positive way. Interpersonal relationships or issues that might have been bothering me improve. Financial quandaries seem to resolve themselves. Very interesting. And that's how I've always kind of gone about applying Neville's advice to my own life. And it's why I think that for a lot of us, especially if we're not having success doing specific Neville techniques, like the techniques that I talked about in the recent 5 lessons mini course or mini class, and the revision techniques that Cecilia was talking about. If you don't have a lot of success doing those specific type of techniques, you might want to be utilizing Neville's advice in a more general way and incorporating it with some of these other great manifesting ideas and teachings. Today I thought I would read from Dissolve the Problem, which is a great Richard Dotz book. I've mentioned it many times, including in my own book, The Joy of Not Thinking. I mentioned this book, Dissolve the Problem. Because Dotz really talks about this quandary a lot of us have, which is that when we get too specific about a desire, we almost can't help ourselves from, when we think about it, not only thinking positively about it, but often thinking negative about it. You know, it's like when you flip a coin, right? One side is heads or tails, right? And, you know, Dot says like, well, you flip a coin, you know, you get heads, but you know the tails is on the other side. You can't have one without the other, right? And he says, how about if you just took away that coin in general? That's the more general approach, or one might say like an absolute method, a golden key method, where you stop thinking about your problems and you stop thinking about a solution too. You're just thinking about God, wholeness right now. Things are okay. Peace right now. Peace isn't even a solution. It's just right now. So, you know, this is, I would say, a rather mature take on this. This isn't like textbook stuff or something that, it's not a technique. This is like realizing that when you're thinking about something you want, what holds us up a lot of the time is thinking about it incorrectly, in that a lot of us are very prone to think about what we want incorrectly. And that if we just didn't think about it hardly at all, it would probably come to us faster. Dissolve the Problem. If you've not read this book by Richard Dotz, and you're resonating with what I'm saying in this video, I would really recommend reading it. So let me read a little bit here. Most people think they have to be the ones to come up with a solution and to make it happen. This misguided view stems from our action-oriented ways of living. For most of the perceived problems in our life, all we need to do is to stop our miscreating. In other words, all that is required of us is that we stop engaging in our negative manifestations. That is all there is. If we stop negatively creating, then the universe will step in and do the other half. When we are not actively blocking what we desire with these negative manifestations, it just means negative thought patterns. When we're not actively blocking what we desire with these negative manifestations, what we want can finally come into our lives. When I worried about my financial situation in the early days, I was doing a whole lot of negative creation without even realizing it. I thought I was proactive and solution-oriented when in fact all my negative thoughts from the moment I woke up to the moment I fell asleep at night were creating my situation of financial lack. I just didn't know I had so much creative power in me to create such an undesired reality. The same is true for you as well. Gosh, those are a profound couple of lines. I'm going to read that again. It's kind of like what I did this quote before. I might get this wrong here, but I think Genevieve Rackham, she said something like, lack is worrying in the now. That's kind of like what Richard's talking about here. Again, he said, I thought I was proactive and solution-oriented when in fact all my negative thoughts were creating my situation of financial lack. I just didn't know I had so much creative power in me to create such an undesired reality. He goes on to write, there is so much creative power in you right now that you can create whatever reality you wish. The fact that certain issues persist in your life means that something is holding them in place. Someone is continually channeling precious universal energy towards the situation, which is what keeps the situation as it is. Just as your freezer has to continually supply energy to keep the ice cubes in their solid state, your existing reality perpetuates its current state only through your continued thoughts, words, and deeds. The person who is directing this massive flow of energy is you. Cut off the electricity supply Or take the ice cubes out of the freezer and they melt into water in no time. The same goes for the perceived problems in your own life. You need to cut off that energy stream which sustains the current state of affairs. The good news is that the only person who can direct this powerful stream of creative energy is you. There is no one else who can do it for you, for no one else can ever create on your behalf. It may seem tempting at first glance to blame others for the problems in your life, just as you can attribute the frozen ice cubes to the ice cube tray that hold everything in place. You can say that tray is what causes these ice cubes, which I do not want. But a much faster way will be to cut off the electricity supply. Without electricity, the ice cubes cannot remain frozen despite the tray that holds the water in place. This is a very powerful metaphor. A lot of the time when we're trying to manifest external changes in our lives, we don't realize that the reason we're having such difficulty in this area, whether it be relationships, health, finances, job, whatever, we don't realize the reason we feel so stuck and so negative about this area of our life that we're trying to change, that we're trying to manifest change in. The reason is us. It's our thinking about it. We're trying to think positively about it. We're trying to think positively about that relationship or our health issue or our financial issue or our job issue. We're trying to think positive about it. Maybe we're doing SATs or doing some kind of visualization or affirmative exercise to think more positively. But what's happening is most of the day, inadvertently, our negative thoughts are running rampant and creating that reality. If we just stop thinking about the situation entirely, or in the very least think about it much, much, much less, 90% less, then your outer reality will change and shift. I've seen this time and time again in my life, and I'm as guilty as the next person of not following this through. It's amazing. I've read this book when it first came out, and I remember really being profoundly affected by it when I read it again, I think like in 2018. So like 5 years ago. And it's amazing how often I forget to apply this advice in my own life. But when we, instead of trying to think of a solution, think positively, think of the desired end, try so hard to do that. When we instead just say, I'm shutting basically everything off, I'm cutting the power supply. Many of us get much better results when we do it that way. I know I do, at least most of the time. So I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, if you're interested in coaching, you can contact me at radicalcounselor.com.